was born in England in 1919 in a place just outside London called Wimbledon. I was a dancer, by the way. I loved dancing. It's all I wanted to do. Before I ever went to a dancing class, I loved dancing. My younger sister went before I did. They never even thought that I would like to go. But after she went, they could see how much I loved it, because I used to take her so that I could watch her. And when she practiced at home, I picked it up from her. So when I went, I already was able to do all that, because I loved it so much. I think about 16, I joined a show that went on tour, a show called The Fleets Lit Up, and had a ball with it. I was finally a professional dancer. They called us the Five Willoughby Sisters, and that's how I started with the shows that entertained the troops. The government put out shows called ENSA, Entertainment's National Service Association. We toured around England for a couple of years, and then in, I think it was 1943, I joined a show that went overseas. I had left the group of dancers, and I now danced with another girl. Her name was Carol Gray, and my name was Peggy Desmond. We went to North Africa, the two of us. The first morning there, we went out for a walk, and we're walking down the street, and along came these two American soldiers. Oh, what this handsome guy. And I said to Carol, I think we should talk to them. She said, well, you don't know them. I said, I know, but I'm going to say hello anyway. So when we got close, I called out and said, hello, how are you? And of course they would laughed, and they were thrilled to death. And that one of them was the man I married. My partner, Carol, she couldn't believe I did this. I would talk to two strays, especially two foreigners, walking along the street. She said to me, Peggy, you just can't do that. I said, well, let's just wait and see. Elle and I just hit it off right off the bat. And we did two shows that night. And by the way, he was there at both shows. We kept in contact all through the years. But during those years, I traveled overseas all the time, sometimes going to a different place every night. Most days you went to a different place every day to do a show, either to the Air Force or the Army or somewhere. But then if there were a garrison theatre where the regular Army was stationed, we loved it because we'd go there and stay in the same theatre for a whole week, and they would bring the troops in. Instead of changing clothes on the side of the stage, you had an actual dressing room to go and change your clothes. Otherwise, wherever the troops were, we went out to the troops. Most of the time we travelled in lorries and sat on the hard seats. But it was fun. We loved doing it, frankly.
When you hear the warning signals, take cover at once.
London was bombed badly. Of course, I toured most of the time, but between shows I would go home, of course, and wherever we were, there were bomb shelters. And because all over England, I mean, it was, you were right there in the midst of the bombing. But it's funny, you get used to it. It's another day. Oh, yeah, yes, did you have a bad night? Oh, yes, we didn't get much to sleep, but you know, it was like the night before. That was the kind of life, it's like everything else, you get used to it. Oh, there's another raid, let's get down into the shelters. You knew, night after night, you were going down in the L-raid shelters. So a lot of times, if you knew it was going to start early, you fixed your meal and took it down there too. And you would take books, you'd read, and you got to know a lot of people. But you didn't know how many years this was going on, so they almost had to have a life that you could live, and if you wanted to, go there and sleep. If we were in the middle of a show, and they were bombing, and as long as it wasn't overhead, but you knew in a hurry how pretty close they were too. But unless they were really close, we just went on with the show. But it was sleeping in a different place every night, which I didn't mind. I loved it. It was my life. I couldn't imagine spending the war any other way, because I did the one thing I loved doing. And frankly, I spent most of my life doing it. I was in Italy when the war ended. When the troops came home, I came home with them. And that was the end of my wartime service. And of course, as soon as I got home, the first letter I had said, well, now the war's over and you're home. When are you coming to America to marry me? Al met me in New York. I had no real friends or family or anything, so to see him, it was such a big relief. You know, I think we both flew into one another's arms like that. I know there were one or two people around us, a couple of them were kind of laughing at us, but you know, it was so good to have somebody there that you knew you wanted to be with and knew he wanted to be with you too. It was nice. And we stayed in New York for, I think, about 5 days. And we did, right from the first day, share the same bed. I'm sure my family often wondered. Nobody said anything, but I know. But I wasn't about to tell them either. None of their business. And you know, we hadn't seen one another in 2 or 3 years, which was a long time. And we kept in touch. We wrote every single week, sometimes more than once a week. Mom and Dad, they were not very happy. But as they said, from about 16 on, I spent a lot of my years away from home, traveling as a dancer. And they made no fuss whatever. They said, if this is your life, you're old enough to know what you want to do. And they both said too, and you know another thing, you know the ship goes both ways. If when you get there things don't turn out the same, you know, same thing comes home. I was never tempted to take it. I came here in '45. I stayed with his family, of course. I didn't know anyone. And I was here for 3 months before we were married. He was Catholic. And he said he would like me to join the Catholic Church. So for 3 months, I went to classes and studied to become a Catholic. And then the following Saturday, the 19th of April, we were married. 2 years later, I had this son. Oh, the joy of our lives, believe me. And then a couple of years later, we had a daughter, Michelle. And then I think we went on with pretty much normal lives like most people do. I went to school, actually. I was over here, though, a little longer than that before I became a citizen. I was here for maybe about 5 years. And I went to school and learned everything that I had to know because you have to take a test. And I did, and I graduated, and then, of course, I became a citizen. I knew I was going to spend the rest of my life here. I wanted everything right from the word go. So everything that I had to do, I willingly did. I gave up dancing for quite a few years, and then I took Michelle to a dancing school. And then when she was a teenager, they opened a class for adults that wanted to go. So I went back to dancing class. And then I was there maybe for a couple of years, and I knew I was pretty good at teaching. I had a lot of patience, let's put it that way. So then I opened my dancing school. I'd worked one way or another all my life. And then I retired and kind of messed around and did the things I wanted to do. And of course, eventually, Al died, and the grandchildren came along, which is pride of joy, of course. And of course, I've knitted all my life, coming from England. So I knitted for most of my friends, and of course all my family always had sweaters and all the baby clothes. You know, we all had all that. The sad thing is now, there's a new baby coming in September, and I don't know how much I can knit anymore. I don't have the patience anymore. I knew that when I came here, if I was coming and getting married, that, you know, I had to make the most of it. And so I did wonder several times before I actually got here and thought, well, I can't say now what's happening. I have to wait and see what happens and decide then. But luckily, things turned out real well. I was lucky. Elle and I had a good life. Like I think some of the girls over here actually, after a couple of years, gave up over here and went home again because they were so homesick. But you see, I had already lived through all that, so I wasn't bothered. And in all honesty, I've had a very good life over here. I have no complaints whatever. The only thing I'm sad about is that Al died so many years ago. I've thought about this many a time. I think things are meant to be. I went all that way. I went to all these different countries, met all these different guys, and I'm walking along the street and see a guy and stop because I want to stop and talk with him and wind up spending the rest of my life with him. I truly and believe these are things, these are meant to be. I hate to say, if you have to go against your family, think it out well before you make any plans whatever. Don't do it overnight. But if this is the person you want to spend the rest of your life with, and you really and truly know it, then you have to say, Mom and Dad, you did it when you were married, now it's my turn. And I believe you should. I'm 90. I was 90 in May, first week in May. That, you know, it's funny, age doesn't bother me in the least. When, you know, another year comes along, and I've heard so many people say, I can't believe, you know, I'm getting that age. So what? You've lived a life, and like me, I've had a very good life. I did most of the things I wanted to do. I have no complaints whatever. If I went home tonight and didn't wake up again after tonight, I've had a good life and no complaints. Being a good dancer. Really and truly. I always wanted to dance right from a real little girl. But I always wanted to be a good dancer too, and I think I wound up as a pretty good dancer. And it's enough to make me happy about it, let's put it that way. And it was a big thing in my life. It enabled me to join those shows and get out and travel, which is something I probably never would have done, because so many people in my immediate family and friends and all that never moved anywhere from where they were when they were growing up. I did so much more than that. So it did a lot for me. It was the tap dancing I loved. I love that. Getting your feet going, and that gets your whole body going. To this day, I can feel it. You have no idea how it feels. You're on top of the world. You own the world. Yes, so even today, if I had tap shoes and put them on, I'd still remember some of those steps to do. I'd have a ball. And my whole body would go into it. I think I was truly, through and through, a dancer. never rode a bull. No, didn't. No, forget it.
Have you ever done anything really adventurous that would like
Riding a bull. If I have, I've forgotten. Oh dear.